Why do you ask questions born in fear? Born in fear. Why do you seek outcome? Why do you seek outcome to potentials that frighten you? To potentials that frighten you. You believe you prepare yourselves. You believe you prepare yourselves through acts of fear, through acts of fear, but in fact you do not. But in fact you do not. Prudence is not fear. Prudence is not fear. How many cans of tuna do I need? How many cans of tuna do I need to make the salad? To make the salad. How many light bulbs to light the house? How many light bulbs to light the house? Discernment, you see. Discernment, you see. The questioning of items. The questioning of items. The idea of opportunity. The idea of opportunity. Born in thought. Born in thought that can be claimed in practical ways. That can be claimed in practical ways. Is not fear. Is not fear. But the idea of fear. But the idea of fear and choosing in fear and choosing in fear must now be addressed. Must now be addressed to support many of you. To support many of you. Not so much because you are frightened. Not so much because you are frightened, but because you seek answers, but because you seek answers, and in fact, answers that can be known, and in fact, answers that can be known in very practical ways, the small self that you are. The small self that you are enjoys defying rules as well, enjoys defying rules as well. It really depends in many ways. It really depends in many ways how you were raised, what you believe authority to be, what you believe authority to be, and how you relinquish control, and how you relinquish control to the idea of authority, to the idea of authority. The idea of authority must be as well. The idea of authority must be understood as well, because in fact, each of you is sovereign, because in fact, each of you is sovereign, right? No matter what God you bow to, God you bow to. You are indeed sovereign. You are indeed sovereign, are accountable to your choices, and are accountable to each of your choices. Now the collective has choices as well. Now the collective has choices as well, and the individual in a pluralized state, and the individual in a pluralized state is of collective, and the collective itself has choices, and the collective itself has choices that is accountable to, that it is accountable to. How we treat one another, how we treat one another, how we care for our poor, how we care for our poor, how we heal our sick, how we heal our sick. Our collective choices are collective choices, and the sovereignty of the collective and the sovereignty of the collective must also be understood as collective karma, as collective karma. A culture has a karma, a culture has a karma, as does a human being, as does a human being. Each of you decides in your own way. Each of you decides in your own way how you attend to the times you sit in, how you attend to the times you sit in. But in some ways you band together. But in some ways you band together in collective reason, agreement or disagreement, decide what should be, and decide what should be through a collective idea of outcome born in fear, If we do not defy them, we will be controlled. We will be controlled if we do not listen to them. If we do not listen to them, we will be harmed. We will be harmed. Some of you say yes and no. Some of you say yes and no anecdotally to the things that appease your ideas of reason, to the things that appease your ideas of reason. But in fact, what must be attended to? What must be attended to now, whether or not you know it, is realization. If you move beyond the small self's agenda, the pluralization of the small self, and the pluralization of the small self, which manifests as us versus them, which manifests as us versus them, which is what you're now incurring, and to your detriment. You must understand that what exists beyond those things, is realization. Realization is knowing. Realization is knowing, and to truly know. And to truly know is to perceive the world in a very different way, that you've been trained in, than you have been entrained in, accustomed to, or chose to agree with, because it confirms your neighbor's ideas, of what should be, The claim of this moment The claim of this moment and the claim of this class and the claim of this class, behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new is the alchemical claim, is the alchemical claim of the divine in reception to itself, of the divine in reception to itself. Underline those words, the divine in reception to itself, the divine in reception to itself. You already understand the idea of co-resonance, the idea of co-resonance, or the plasticity of manifestation, or the plasticity of manifestation. But many of you learned these things, but many of you have learned these things in the lower realms. In the lower realms, I will get a toaster, I will get a toaster, I will get a better house, I will get a better house, I will appease the universal idea, I will appease the universal idea of self-worth, to claim what is truly mine, to claim what is truly mine. Now, when you lift beyond the small, to the higher, you move beyond the small self's agenda, and you move beyond the small self's agenda, be it toaster or house, you come to a new conclusion, Everything is of God. Everything is of God, or nothing can be at all, or nothing can be at all. And to manifest at this level of chord, is to manifest through the divine, is to manifest through the divine self as who and what you are, the divine self as who and what you are, without planning, perhaps except for the other bulbs, perhaps except for the light bulbs and the tuna fish, for the light bulbs and the tuna fish, but with an awareness that the supply of all things, can be known by you, in vibrational accord, Now, when you lift a light, above you, the light illumines more, When you hide your light within you, you secretize your illumination, When the light that you are, begins to shine brightly, it moves into agreement, or confirmation of all light that exists, You become the conductor of light, you become the conductor of light and the recipient of light, both at the same moment, The teaching you receive this week, the teaching you will receive this week, given you allowed to wish, if indeed we are allowed to teach as we wish, will be the teaching of illumination, and co-resonance as illumined, and co-resonance as illumined. The way forward is lit, you see. The way forward is lit, you see, by the light that you are, by the light that you are, and the light that you are, and the light that you are will in fact claim the light in all she sees, will in fact claim the light in all she sees. Thus the claim, behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. What has been hidden in darkness will be revealed. What has been hidden in darkness will be revealed, not to be blamed, not to be frightened of, but to be supported in healing. The one who lifts the rock, intending to reveal the vermin beneath, so she can stamp upon the vermin, is doing no one any good, The one who reveals what lies beneath the rock, must understand what exists beneath the rock, must understand that what exists beneath the rock must also be of God, in that realization. And in that realization, what was beneath the rock, what was beneath the rock is indeed lifted, and renowned, and the clay, behold, I make all things new, and the clay, behold, I make all things new, is what does the lifting, what does the receiving, what claims what you see, and what claims what you see, in the octave equivalent, to the one you claim it through, you're all in tone, you are all in tone at different varying levels, of vibration, The collective has a tone as well. And the collective tone of fear that has been played now, being played now, is orchestrating itself in some ways to release itself from its hold. In fact, what happens to a blister that gets full, is the blister blister must release. It must be drained. It must be drained. It often takes the time, and it often takes the time to become full before this occurs. Before this occurs, the chafing and the fear, the chafing and the fear that you're all in confirmation to, that you are all in confirmation to, must indeed have release, must indeed have release. And how this occurs in some ways, and how this occurs in some ways, is entirely up to you, is entirely up to you, the independent self. The independent self, the one that knows herself as sovereign, the one who knows herself as sovereign, who can truly claim the words, who can truly claim the words, I know who I am in truth, I know who I am in truth, I know what I am in truth, I know how I serve in truth, I am free, I'm free, I'm free, I am free, I am free, I am free, also begins to understand that she is of the whole, that she is of the whole. The divine does not exist. The divine does not exist independently from itself, independently from itself. Underline that. Underline that. The divine does not exist. The divine does not exist independently of itself, independently of itself. It is always of the whole. It is always of the whole. And while you are unique manifestations, are unique manifestations of the whole in your own perfection, as is all your separate self, which we may call the small self, believes itself to be separate, through entrainment and low vibration, through entrainment in low vibration, the low vibrational octave you share, that you know of as your reality, has been so informed by fear, that the collective has agreed, to a reality, that in fact is incurred, that in fact it has incurred. Do you understand this? Imagine you pollute the air. You see 1 foot in front of you and no more. You see 1 foot in front of you and no more. You grow up in a world where that is the known, It does not occur to you. It does not occur to you that you may see other, but in fact the other exists. You must live beyond what you call pollution. You must live beyond what you call pollution to breathe the fresh air. You must see beyond the cloud of smoke. You must see beyond the cloud of smoke to see what is true, And the lifting to the upper room we teach you, and the lifting to the upper room where we teach you is where this occurs, is indeed where this occurs, because you've been so entrained by fear, because you have been so entrained by fear and seek to justify it at all costs, We will be right, they will be wrong. We will be right, they will be wrong. Again, the action of fear and polarization. Again, the action of fear and polarization. You forget about union. You forget about union. You abide in a low octave, and you will fight yourselves to death this way, and you will fight yourselves to the death this way. This is a guarantee. This is a guarantee. If humanity doesn't take the opportunity to lift above its obstacles, it's misseeing, it's misperception, and see itself as of one source. As of one source, you will claim a history. You will claim a history born in separation, that ends there as well. We will say that is not what we see happening. We will say that is not what we see happening. Again, the individual sovereign. Again, the individual is sovereign in realization, and realization by any individual, true realization as we say it, and true realization as we say it, the witnessing of the divine in all things, the witnessing of the divine in all things is not only contagious, but supports rearticulation, rearticulation. You must understand rearticulation. You must understand rearticulation to comprehend this teaching. There is one note played in the universe. There is one note played in the universe. Everything is of this note. Everything is of this note in vibration and tone, in vibration and tone. There is low vibration, there is low vibration, high vibration, and high vibration, the octave you express in, and the octave you express in, a manifest octave or domain. A manifest octave or domain holds articulation, low vibration, holds articulation and low vibration. Any song may be sung. Any song may be sung in any octave upon you, in any octave upon you, but you must choose. But you must choose to lift to the higher octave, to lift to the higher octave. The idea of transposing music, the idea of transposing music to a higher key in manifest form. In manifest form is what we call rearticulation, is what we call rearticulation. Now, you are in an articulated state now. The divine has come as each of you in all things. The divine has come as each of you and all things in a vibratory field that you have chosen to learn through, that you have chosen to learn through, given control over, and claim anew, if indeed you are willing to lift beyond the old, if indeed you are willing to lift beyond the old. Now each of you here in your sovereign state, can lift to what we call the upper room, can lift to what we call the upper room, which is the octave above the one you know, which is the octave above the one you know. And from this place of seeing, from this place of intonation, from this place of intonation, I am word, I am word, and indeed the word, as we claim it, is the one note played in the universe, articulating all manifestation. Articulating is all manifestation, the claim you make upon the world, in this vibratory tone, actually lifts or rearticulates what you see, or rearticulates what you see, in what we call lifting things, to the upper room, Anything can be lifted, but you cannot lift what you damn, but you cannot lift what you damn. You cannot lift what you deny God in. You cannot lift what you deny God in. What you deny God in, you put in darkness. And what you put in darkness, indeed calls you to that darkness, indeed calls you to that darkness. The reckoning you are facing now, both individually and collectively, is the reseeing of the lie of separation, how you treat your brother, how you treat your sick, how you treat yourself, these aspects of self that you have put in shadow for yourself, tether you to the darkness, and are now asking to be released, The reckoning humanity faces now. The reckoning humanity faces now is happening on multiple levels, And in fact, this is a collective choice. Humanity has chosen to ascend and claim opportunity to ascend, and claim opportunity to ascend. You have not had a collective event. Beyond a meteor, once upon a time, that transitioned reality, at the level you're about to face, at the level you are about to face. The claim of the meteor was to enter a new age, and the know of as a virus, and the claim of what you know of as a virus is indeed the same, but this reckoning is rather different. The manifestation of the divine, as you have each known it, is seeking to reveal itself to all of you. In fact, what has been hidden under the rock, that which you placed in darkness, that which you have placed in darkness is seeking to be known in light, is seeking to be reknown in light. That which you have been so frightened of must be seen as God, or it cannot be lifted, How do we see something we're frightened of as God? He says, how do we see something we are frightened of as God? He says, well, we will answer that in our way. You are the one that makes it fearful. You are the one that makes it fearful. Do you understand this? Do you understand this? You make it fearful. You make it fearful. You create it in fear. You create it in fear. We have long said that the fear of death was a final initiation. Many of you was a final initiation for many of you, because as long as you are frightened of death, because as long as you are frightened of death, you are clinging to the known. You are clinging to the known. And life as we understand life, and life as we understand life, exists well beyond physical form, exists well beyond physical form, into the infinite, because the idea of death itself, has been so misunderstood, that you believe it to be an ending and not a beginning, that you believe it to be an ending and not a beginning, which indeed it is our opportunity to teach. Our opportunity to teach, and we will take it if we are allowed, and we will take it if we are allowed, is to shepherd you each, to the altar of giving, and the altar of giving self, and the altar of giving self, all of self, to the source of all things, to be renowned, so you may be renowned, that the shadows that you hide in the closets beneath you, that those things you conceal from yourself and others, that those things that you conceal from yourself and others may be seen anew, and glorious new, in glorious new, and wondrous new, light that will reveal the divine, and what was once placed in shadow, in what was once placed in shadow. Humanity has choices, you see. Humanity has choices, you see, the sovereign self who can lift the world through her eyes, from the vantage point of the upper room. From the vantage point of the upper room is of the whole. You do not exist independently. You do not exist independently from it. Although you think you do, you are sharing the air you breathe. You are sharing the air you breathe. And in these days, perhaps sharing a virus that expresses between you. You're not nearly as separate as you believe yourselves to be. You are not nearly as separate as you believe yourselves to be. The realization of this is not to confine you to your homes, but in fact to lift you above them, The humanity as a whole may see itself anew, may cherish its individuality, through the collective lens of plurality. One snowflake is not a storm. One snowflake is not a storm. The snowflake exists in the storm. The snowflake exists in the storm. It is unique in its creation. But pluralized by its presence amongst the many. There is one source of the snow. And the snow, when melted, returns to its prior state. You indeed are the same. But you are so adamant. In the idea of separation. That you would deny the divinity in the one beside you. By claiming your own. We will say this very simply. That is an act of heresy. Heresy, quite simply. Is denying the divine, that must be present, underline must, in spite of what you want for yourself, in spite of what those people, in spite of what you think of those people, or what you see happen to them, or what you would see happen to them. Now, we are not making you saints. Now we are not making you saints. You don't have the right. You say this differently. You have the right. You have the right to not like your neighbor, to not want to have lunch with her, to not have lunch with her. You do not have the right. You do not have the right to deny the divine in your neighbor, to deny the divine in your neighbor without incurring one action, What you deny the divine in, you deny in yourself. You deny in yourself who you place in shadow darkness, Who you place in shadow or darkness calls you to the shadow, calls you to the shadow or darkness. And that is the law of co-resonance. And that is the law of co-resonance. What you witness the divine in, what you witness the divine in blesses you in return, blesses you in return. What you damn damns you back. What you damn damns you back by nature of co-resonance. By nature of co-resonance, what you bless or lift, what you bless or lift. And indeed, blessing is seeking the presence. And indeed, blessing is seeing the presence, is seeing the presence of the divine upon what you bless, upon what you bless calls the same blessing to you, calls the same blessing to you, when plurality becomes the norm. When plurality becomes the norm, when you know you're a brother's keeper, when you know you are your brother's keeper, when you shepherd your fellows out of the storm, when you shepherd your fellows out of the storm and not deep into darkness, and not deep into darkness, the world that you see before you, the world that you see before you will indeed be lifted, will indeed be lifted. We see this happening, yes. We see this happening, yes. He interrupts the teaching, we wish he would not. He interrupts the teaching, we wish he would not. Well, where and when? He says, well, where and when? He says, when does this occur? When does this occur? We will answer this in a different way than you wish, Paul. We will answer this in a different way than you wish, Paul. It's already present. It is already present in what we call the upper room, in what we call the upper room. It already expresses there. It already expresses there. Every song may be sung in multiple keys. Every song may be sung in multiple keys and multiple octaves and multiple octaves. When you are lifted to the upper room, when you are lifted to the upper room, you begin to abide in a landscape. You begin to abide in a landscape where you cannot separate others, where you cannot separate others or deny the divinity in them, or deny the divinity in them. When you operate at this place, when you operate at this place, the simple action you express, the simple action you express as the true self is indeed lifting all things, is indeed the lifting of all things. To the vibratory you sing in, to the vibratory tone you are singing in. The divine has come as you, yes. The divine has come as you, yes. But your realization of the divine in others is what creates a new world, is what creates a new world. Now, what happens practically? Now, what happens practically when you lift another upper room? When you lift another to the upper room may not be what you want to hear, may not be what you want to hear, but may help some of you understand better, but may help some of you understand better. There is an aspect of each of you. There is an aspect of each of you who knows who she truly is, who knows who she truly is, what he truly is, what he truly is, and how she truly serves, and how she truly serves. How you serve is your true expression. How you serve is your true expression, your vibration and tone, your vibration and tone, your gift to the world in vibration, your gift to the world in vibrational accord, in vibrational accord with the divine in all things, with the divine in all things. The denial of this, the denial of this is the only problem humanity has, is the only problem humanity has. We'll say this again, and we will say this again. The denial of the divine in your brother, the denial of the divine in your brother, in the land that you share, in the land that you share, in the air that you breathe collectively, in the air that you breathe collectively, is the only thing, is the only thing that impedes the divine, from its full expression, from its full expression. As we often say, nothing can be made holy, nothing can be made holy. It already is. We deny anything, but you may deny the divine in anything. To realize another from the upper room, to realize another from the upper room is to claim as they truly are, is to claim them as they truly are, to claim that aspect of the self that knows, to claim that aspect of the self that knows beyond what is believed, beyond what it has believed, beyond how it's denied the divine, beyond how it has denied the divine, beyond how it has refused glory and self-damnation in self-damnation or damnation of others, and in fact lifts them, and in fact lifts them not by force of will, but through co-resonance, to their rightful inheritance. to their rightful inheritance. This is not an arguable point. This is not an arguable point. It is not about will. It is not about will. It is about co-resonance. It is about co-resonance. You do not lift gravity. You do not lift gravity or decide what gravity is or decide what gravity is. It's a law that you abide in. It is a law that you abide in. This is the same. This is the same co-resonance in the field you hold. Co-resonance in the field you hold in a high tone, in a high tone, in a vibratory accord, with all you see, in fact, can and will lift what you encounter, in fact, can and will lift what you encounter. A human being is transformed. A human being is transformed not through your idea of him, not through your idea of him, but through your knowing of him, but through your knowing of him. And to know is to realize, and to know is to realize. To know one who feels herself foolish, to know one who feels herself foolish or unloved as having wisdom, and in love indeed transforms the one you see, and indeed transforms the one you see. The lifting of another cannot be done through force, cannot be done through force. That would be an overriding of will, but it can be transformed, Now the process of alchemizing the old, which indeed we will teach you this week, through the claim, through the claim, behold, I make all things new, is not only receiving, is not only the reseeing, but the rearticulation, not only of matter, but of identity, but of identity. And this will be a new teaching for Paul, and we are preparing him, and many of our students, for the text that we wish to bring through, in the coming weeks, the teaching of re-identification, the teaching of re-identification and identity in identity is big and strong and ready to be talked, through him, but his unwillingness to hear these words, we intend to address in the coming days, so we can write the book we wish, we wish. Each of you here, whether or not you know it, is what happens here, is in agreement to what happens here. And what do we intend to happen here? And what we intend to happen here is a collective agreement, or pluralization, of the monad, or the Christ in manifestation, so it's collective claim. So that its collective claim, behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new, will support itself, its tone and reverberation, all that can be seen, on all that can be seen. We will continue this teaching. We will continue this teaching after a brief pause for Paul. We will return then with questions. Take your time now, Paul. Take your time now, Paul. Period.